All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. As the war in Ukraine rages on, European nations are facing soaring energy prices and inflation as a result of the Western sanctions against Russia. And now there are rumblings within the European Union on the Russian oil embargo, while Serbia has finalized a gas deal with Russia. The Balkan state has secured a new long-term contract with the Kremlin. President Alexander Vučić confirmed that Serbia has agreed for a 3-year gas supply contract during talks at a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He further added that although he could not share the price, Vučić has assured that the deal is actually in the best interest of Europe, adding that they had agreed that the price of gas will be linked to the price of oil. Vučić has also said that he had already discussed the further expansion of gas storage space by Russia in Serbia. Now, the Serbian gas deal has come at a time when the European Union is trying to reduce its dependence on Russian energy products. The 27 European Union states are scheduled to meet later in the day today for an emergency summit in Brussels, where they'll discuss the methods to try and resolve the deadlock on a new possible Russian oil embargo. Now, the European Union, remember, is mulling if the embargo needs to be watered down in the face of Hungarian opposition. 3 weeks after the EU chief proposed the ban on Russian oil imports, the plan is still stalled, with Hungary saying that it needs at least about 4 years and about $860 million to upgrade its refineries. The latest proposal has been blocked by Budapest, which has no access to seafaring oil cargo ships and is dependent on Russian supplies through the Druzhba pipeline for nearly about 65% of its oil needs. Now, the 6th tranche of the EU sanctions will by far be the most powerful, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Europe to adopt it to ensure the cutting of funding to the Russian war chest. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what is being discussed in Brussels today, we are joined in by our correspondent Rosie Burchett, who is joining us live from Brussels at this point of time. Rosie, this has been a point of contention for the last several weeks now, the proposed 6th round of sanctions. We've heard talk about this for at least about 3 weeks now, but no headway has in fact been made. Tell us more.
You're quite right. It was almost 4 weeks ago, indeed, that the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen took to the podium in the European Parliament and announced that the Commission, the bloc's executive, was proposing a full embargo on Russian oil that would be phasing out all imports of Russian crude oil and refined oil products by the end of this year, with a certain extension for the countries which were landlocked and most reliant on Russia. Now, that has proved incredibly controversial, and it has led to, as you mentioned, deadlock among EU countries. We should note that without unanimous backing from all 27 EU member states, these sanctions cannot move forward. Now, there have been various options and workarounds put on the table. EU ambassadors have been meeting here in Brussels this morning in a last-ditch attempt to try and find some sort of a compromise before leaders head into talks later this afternoon. The latest compromise that countries are eyeing is the potential to ban all seaborne imports of Russian oil, but to exclude, for now at least, oil deliveries by pipeline. Some would call that a compromise, others would call it caving in. At this stage, the European Union, there is a sense among diplomats I've spoken to at least that this deal does need to get across the line to show that the European Union remains united with this 6th package of sanctions imposed against Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine.
Absolutely indeed, but in the interim there are countries like Serbia which has applied to be a part of the EU, but it is still not a part of the EU, which have gone and struck deals with Russia. So how does this impact the European Union's resolve to actually go ahead and impose a complete embargo on Russian oil?
I would say it doesn't impact their resolve insofar as Serbia is not currently a member, so it doesn't have a seat at that table in terms of decision making and giving that final backing to this accord if it does get across the line. But it does raise some very interesting questions. The European Union wants to make sure that candidate countries and the countries in its neighbourhood are on board with its sanctions against Moscow, and Serbia has shown itself to be an outlier there, rather keeping up ties with the Kremlin, whereas European Union countries, at least most of them, have essentially severed ties finalise and continue to impose sanctions on Russia. Now, you mentioned gas there. This latest proposal for a sixth round of sanctions is about sanctioning oil, banning the imports of oil. It was supposed to be easier to get this deal across the line than a deal on gas. Gas is seen as much more complicated, harder to replace, and a type of energy on which European Union nations are more dependent compared to oil. So essentially this doesn't bode well for future sanctions, including gas, because there has been such difficulty to get this particular round of sanctions across the line.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Rosie Burchett, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.